Hey, what's up guys? John here again. So this is part 2 of the energy suspension polyurethane bushing install for the control arm bushings. This video is going to be for the rear control arms, part 1 is for the front control arms. So if you haven't already checked out part 1, I encourage you to do so. I'll put that link in the description below. But let's go ahead and get started on the rear control arm bushings. Alright, so I'm going to assume this doesn't come as any surprise that the back is a little bit more extensive than the front, just because we have a drive shaft that we also have to remove. So back here it looks like I'm going to start off by removing the shock, which is pretty simple. Just a bolt at the top, a bolt at the bottom. I'm also going to have to remove this ball joint here, so I'm going to pop that out. I'm going to have to remove the sway bar end link over here. Disconnect that. I'm going to disconnect this this half shaft here. So sorry, I might have called it a drive shaft, but the half shafts have to be removed. So I'm going to disconnect them by removing these 8mm bolts and end caps here. And then I guess I have this sort of zip tie thing. I don't know if I'm missing something, but again, I'm not the original owner, so it looks like somebody put a zip tie here to prevent this emergency brake line from hitting the drive shaft and maybe rubbing. So I don't know if there's something factory that originally goes there, but anyways, I'm going to cut this zip tie, and then I can also remove the caliper. The caliper's going to come off, and then the bolts. So the top bolts, these ones here, I don't have to index those, but the bottom ones I'm going to index those again, just so that we can get it close, so that I can take it over to get alignment. So let's get started on that, and I'm going to start by removing the shock. So let's do it. Okay, so the shocks are held in by a bolt head that's an 18mm, and the nut is going to be a 21mm, assuming you have the original hardware. And that's the same for the top and the bottom, so go ahead and remove those. Okay, now that the shock's out, I'm going to go ahead and remove this 15mm nut so I can remove the sway bar end link. Okay, so you can probably notice that the boot on my sway bar end link is shot. I'm probably going to end up replacing these end links down the line. Maybe not immediately, but it's definitely on my to-do list. So this is removed. Remove the nut, and this should slide out. Okay, so that's removed. I'm going to put this nut on just so I don't lose it. Okay, so there's that, and like I said, the boot's damaged and torn, so I guess I could replace the boot, but I'll probably just do the whole link because it's easier. Same thing with the bottom one. This bottom boot's torn too, so another thing I'll show you guys, since we are on the subject of torn boots. I'm hoping you can see this. Let's see if I can get something on it. So the reason why I'm changing all of these bushings is because they are cracked. So every single one of these bushings, because my car is in a dry climate, they are seeing quite a bit of crackage. So they're all dried out. I don't know if you can see that there, but every single bushing on this thing is pretty dried out. So that is the reason for replacing it. There's another one there, if you can see that, and how dried and cracked it is. So let's continue. Next, I'm going to probably remove this ball joint. So I'm going to take out the cotter pin, take off the castle nut, and remove this one. So let's go ahead with that. Okay, once you get the cotter pin out, the castle nut is a 22mm. Okay, so I know it almost sounds dangerous and you wouldn't want to do it to your car, but there's two basic ways. So you can use the ball joint splitter to remove the ball joint, or you can use a hammer and tap along here. So usually when you use this ball joint splitter, it usually rips the boot. So what I just did was just to try and tap here with the hammer without, going crazy or damaging anything. So I tapped that with the hammer, and that resulted in getting this ball joint removed without ripping any boots. So I mean, and as you can see, there's no damage whatsoever to this arm. So I would try that. Like I said, don't go crazy with it with the hammer, but it's definitely worth a try to just basically dislodge this and give it some taps to see if it'll pop out before going ahead and using a ball joint splitter that may or may not rip the boot. So try that first. So this is removed. Yeah, this castle nut's loose on the bottom, and this is ready to come out. So I'm gonna move on to the caliper and the half shafts. So let's go ahead and tackle that stuff. Alright, so for the caliper, I'm gonna remove this zip tie that is here. Somebody put there. So that's gone, so this is free now. And there is a 15mm bolt that holds the lower slide pin and caliper on. So I'm gonna remove that. I haven't had this caliper off necessarily, so the top bolt for the caliper appears to be an Allen key or an Allen head bolt. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get away with removing this. So here's that 15mm bolt I was telling you about. So if I can swing the caliper without having to remove that upper bolt, or if it's gonna require me to try to remove that one. So I'm gonna find out now. The other thing too is my rotors are a little bit dated, so there is a little bit of a ridge on the end that's causing me to fight a little bit with getting this caliper off. Okay, so I don't know if this is already something that's well known in the Viper community, but if it is, oh well, I'm gonna go over it anyways. So what I did was, like I said, on the bottom of the caliper, there's obviously two bolts that hold on the caliper, or posts. So the bottom is a 15mm head bolt. If you remove that, and then on the top, you have this strange situation where there is an Allen head bolt, which you can see right there, and it is obstructed by the parking brake cable, and that's a pain in the ass to remove. So what I did was I removed the brake pads, and once you remove the brake pads, you can slide this up like this with the bottom bolt removed, and you can actually just sneak in enough that you can get the whole rotor off. So once you get the rotor off and to the side, then you can slide this completely off, and then we're out of the way. So then you can slide the caliper off, and the caliper's removed. So I don't know if that's already something everyone knows, but I'm sure they'll save everybody a bunch of time and nonsense of trying to remove their parking brake and then take out this Allen head bolt. So that's out of the way, and next I can work on the half shaft. Okay, so next you're going to want to index your bottom bolts. So you want to index them just so you know the placement that they were, because they are adjustable. So I'm just, again, indexing them so that when I put this back together, it's somewhat close before I go for the alignment. So I've already indexed both sides, and then I'm going to remove these lower bolts. So they are 19mm on each side, the nut and the bolt. So let's go ahead and remove those bottoms, and then all that's basically left is to remove these tops, and then this whole assembly should come out. So I'm going to remove. Okay, so next is to remove these two upper control arm bolts. They are an 18mm, both the bolt and the nut. So we'll remove these, and this is pretty much ready to fall out now. So let's get those out and get this thing out of here. Okay, so we finally got this assembly out, so I'm going to go ahead and clean this and then start removing the bushings. So same as what I did with the front ones, I used a bunch of degreaser, something, had it out, and basically cleaned everything up, made it all look nice. So I just want to show you guys too, since I have a closer view. This is the reason why I'm replacing all these. So my car is probably newer than most of the other Gen 2s out there, being a 2000, but you can see these bushings are just dried and they're toast. So I think you should be able to see that in the camera, but they're all dried out, dry rotted. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace them, obviously. And yeah, here's my tie rod, or not tie rod, but sway bar end links, and the boots are obviously destroyed, and so is the lower one destroyed as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably replace these end links, but I don't know if I can do it right now. It's not like they're clanking or anything, but I am going to replace them, so don't worry, that will get taken care of. But yeah, I just want to get these bushings in, and at least I can get the car back together. This I can always change when the car's back together. It's not a big deal. So go ahead and clean this up, and we'll start removing these. So it is the next morning. Last night I took the liberty of cleaning the control arm assembly from the, I guess it's the passenger side rear. So you can see that it's pretty damn clean at this point. So what I actually did was I had a bit of downtime and actually found out that these control arms and the hub being this part here, or knuckle, whatever you want to call it, but it's actually painted an aluminum color. I thought it was just cast aluminum, but they're actually painted. So I degreased them. They still kind of looked like crap. So I went ahead and grabbed just some cast aluminum paint. This is engine block paint, and just freshened them up. So I didn't go crazy with it. No overspray on any of the other parts, but just basically clean them up. And I think you guys can agree that they look pretty damn good at this point. So just as a comparison, I went ahead and tore out the driver's side, and this is what the driver's side looks like. So this is how dirty and grungy and stained that these look from just years of, you know, road grime and whatnot. So I think you guys can agree that that looks a hell of a lot better. So I'm gonna have to degrease this one too, and I'm gonna do the same thing. So degrease it, get off as much of the, you know, grease and grime and road grit as possible, and then once I get them clean, then I'm gonna go ahead and do the painting on it as well. Okay, so first on these bushings, we're gonna pop out the inner collars. So on the inside of the bushing, this is just using the same method that I use on the front. You could probably cut them off if you want, you don't need them, but I'm just using this small, basically 1/4 inch assembly here. So it's an 8mm deep socket with this small 1/4 inch extension. So I'm just pushing it, I'm putting it on an angle, I'm not trying to be straight with it. So when I put it on an angle, it hooks on that inner lip, and then I just pop it out. So this is what we're gonna do on all 4 of these bushings, because they're all the same. And then I can cut away that rubber material, and then we can push the whole thing out. That's the collar we wanted to remove. Okay, so here are those 4 collars removed without this piece of hair. But here's the 4 collars that were removed with that little device that I was showing you earlier, that I made up with the extension and that socket. So those 4 popped out. It sounds like a gunshot when they come out, but that's the easiest way that I figured to get them out without cutting them or hacking them out. So those are out, and now I'm going to use the razor and cut away the excess rubber here, so that when I press these bushings out, that they don't get bound up and caught on this rubber here. So same thing for all 4. I'm gonna cut this rubber away, and on the upper, same thing, cut the rubber away, and then we can press these bushings out and insert the polyurethane ones. Okay, as I'm sure you could probably tell, that is a royal pain in the ass. So this is what I was trying to achieve. So we have the extra little bit of rubber cut off, so that when we press this bushing out, it doesn't get bound up and caught. And so we can actually press against the metal mating surface instead of this rubber piece that's on top, and this gets mushroomed out and then it gets caught. So I want to apply the least amount of pressure to the control arms as possible, and this is the way to do it. So yeah, these are all cut off on all of them. So we all have clean surfaces, no rubber, and we're ready to start pressing these out. Okay, so just to recap, we have the same size socket as before, a 15/16 socket into a 1/2 inch extension, followed by another 1/2 inch extension. And then I have a 3/8 extension in order to fit through this bushing that's currently installed and push directly down, because you don't want to apply any pressure to this and fold the arm. So this is what we got, and we're gonna go ahead and press this out. Alright, so this is the combination we're using: a 15/16 socket, 1/2 inch drive, followed by another 1/2 inch drive. Just since this bushing in here, we can get through it cleanly. And we'll go ahead and press this out. And she's out. So that is the bushing removed. And we'll go ahead to the lower control arm now. Alright, same setup again. except this one has the 1/2 inch and the 1/2 inch straight through. Okay, so here's all 4 bushings removed and those collars that we took off before. And here is the control arm assembly with the bushings removed. So everything came out cleanly, no issues. These ones seemed a little bit more difficult than the front ones. If you take a look here, you can see the ring here. There's not a whole lot of surface area to support the arm. This one comes out to right here, and you can just barely get something to grab on here. Same even with the fronts. If you look here, this ring, basically you only have this tiny little lip here. It's like 1/8 of an inch to sit there and try to support it. So same with that side. It comes right out to the edge here, right out to the edge there, and you just have these 2 little lips to try and support it to press it out. So that is a little bit of a task, but it's done. So if you guys tackle it, good luck with that. But I mean, it is obviously doable. It's just a little bit of a pain in the ass. Okay, so let's get these cleaned up and let's get those polyurethane bushings pressed in. Okay, so here we are again, same as the fronts. I'm gonna grease these up and then just press these in, hopefully by hand. Then we'll go ahead and put the collars in. So we'll grab some grease, same grease as before. This Valvoline grease that was recommended. So let's put these on the side here. So there's 2 halves to these, and again, Energy Suspension recommends to put grease on any part that contacts with metal. So that's what I am doing. So even though we don't suppose the outside of this is going to be spinning inside my control arm, I still advise to put grease on it to prevent squeaking. So that's what I'm gonna do. So these have 2 halves. The outer is the larger one. I think it's 2793 is the part number on the bushing. So we'll go ahead and put this here and hopefully palm it in like we did with the fronts, like so. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do the other side so you guys know basically what I'm doing. Everything's gonna be greased, it's gonna be pushed in by hand, and then we'll go ahead and press in these sleeves. Okay, next, it doesn't take much force, but we're just using the H-frame press just to push in these sleeves. So I can do this by hand, but I'll use what we have available. Okay, so that's all together and installed. Alright, so next is the same step as the front, where you install the end washers. So I'm going to go ahead and use that method that I did on the front to try to prevent these things from giving away or whatever the case is. But these are replacement ones that Energy Suspension actually sent out, so maybe they're better than the last ones as well. So, same as before. Toss this through here. That through there. I guess I could use this one as well. Alright, same thing over here. Okay, and it's pretty redundant, but you're going to do the same for the top, so I'll go ahead and do those as well. Alright, so we are all set to put this back in. So the install is, of course, just the complete reverse of the removal. So I'm going to go ahead and hang the top control arm first, just to make my life easier. Okay. So I have the control arm assembly supported with this bucket here. This happens to be the correct height, and I have the 2 upper bolts installed. I would be lying to you if I didn't say that that was an absolute pain in the ass to get these bushings into these brackets that are welded to the frame. I had to use this dead blow hammer just on the control arm. Obviously you can see I didn't mark anything. It's not like I was going ballistic on it, but just tapping it back and forth to get this to get into there. So it is in now. I'm gonna go ahead and just loosely put these nuts on, and I'm hoping the rear, not the rear, but the bottom control arm isn't gonna be that brutal to try and get in there. So let's go ahead and see if that's gonna be just as much fun as the top was. What you're gonna wanna do is get your lower bolts, the adjustable ones, into the relative position as what they were before. If you remember, we indexed them, so I've taken a look at those. Those are back in the relative position they were before. And again, this isn't so that you don't have to do an alignment or anything like that. This is just so that you get it close for the alignment guys, and also if you happen to be driving over there, you're not going to shred your tires on the way over. So those are in the right position. We're going to tighten those top ones. We're going to tighten those as well. Before you tighten it, you want it to be relatively in the position where your suspension is going to be. And yeah, so you'll almost want to put the shock in first and then tighten on the bolts, just so you're in the right area before you actually pinch down on those bushings. So other than that, you're going to want to put your drive shaft in. Those are those 2 end caps, and they have those 2 bolts in it with the 8mm heads. So you're going to put new caps on those. I don't have the new ones right now, but those are going to be going on. And also you're going to want to reattach your sway bar end link, and then this kind of tie rod end for the rear end. Put the castle nut on, put the cotter pin in, and you're all set. And other than that, just simple stuff. You're gonna put your rotor back on, put your caliper back on, put your brake pads back in, that whole bit. I'm gonna leave it like this for now because I'm actually replacing the rear differential. So I have a differential with 373 gears that's gonna be going in. So this stuff's all simple as far as reassembly though. Same as what you guys saw when we took it apart, and we just reviewed that as well. So this is it. The bushings are replaced. I'm gonna leave it like this for now just because I gotta take out this half shaft to be able to get out my rear differential, so I don't want to put all this stuff back together and then take it all apart just to take out this half shaft. Alright, thanks for watching guys. I'm gonna start ripping out that rear diff, but this is it for this video on how to replace the control arm bushings. I hope you enjoyed it, hope it was helpful. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe because there's gonna be more videos. So like I said, I also got that 373 rear differential that I'm gonna throw in here. I'm just waiting on a few parts before I can actually tackle that and put it back together. So look for that next video, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
What we do here is go back.